Well, thank you, Jill and Metro FBA for having me. It's been great being kind of a member and being able to kind of contribute back and kind of share some of our information. So just a real quick synopsis of me. Again, my name is Ben. I'm the owner-director of School Marketing. We've been around for about 6 years now. Prior to starting School Marketing, I actually worked at Google, where I became a Google certified speaker, traveled the country giving presentations. And when I started School Marketing, I really wanted to kind of build that into what we do for the community and kind of give back and help people. What I like to tell people we do is we educate people so they can make an educated decision. So if you guys like these sorts of topics, I encourage you to follow us. Check out our website at schoolmarketing.com. We do these sorts of things to, again, help the community. So today we're going to be talking about search engine optimization, or SEO, and kind of understanding that, and obviously taking some questions and hopefully giving you an idea of what SEO is, some of the changes that we've seen over the past year, 2 years with Google, and then going forward, what are some things that you can actually implement on your own website, or if you do work with someone, if that's like a consultant like me, if that's an employee, if that's an intern, you kind of know what they're doing, or you know how to direct them with it as well. So with that said, we'll kind of go ahead and get started. The first thing I like to tell people is to kind of clarify what SEO is. So SEO is going to be search engine optimization. What we're talking about here is essentially optimizing our search engine presence. So if we can understand how Google, Yahoo, Bing like to read our websites or what they're looking for, we can organically or authentically model their needs and wants, and then, obviously, hopefully reap the benefits of getting higher rankings within those. So today we're going to be focusing on Google just because, again, especially when we're talking about the Twin Cities here in the Minnesota market, for a lot of small business owners, we see usually an 85 to 93% market share, usually for the average small business owner when it comes to Google. Doesn't mean the other search engines aren't important, doesn't mean that you aren't being found on the other search engines. It's just obviously, again, looking at our ROI, or return on investment, for our time and energy that we're spending. The other kind of benefit with this as well is if you focus on Google, it essentially has a ripple effect, because Yahoo and Bing, and there's a couple other search engines out there as well, have kind of accepted that Google is the forefront or the is kind of the trailhead, and so they're going to pave the path. And Yahoo and Bing and the other search engines are going to allow it to kind of see what happens and then kind of put their own spin on it. Benefit for you is you can kind of focus on Google, and again, you're going to have that ripple effect. And just honestly, another fun fact is that if you actually do use Yahoo, believe it or not, you're actually using Bing search engines. About a year and a half, 2 years ago, Yahoo stopped doing search and actually just farms out Bing's search engine algorithm now. So just kind of a little fun fact. So some of the things that we're going to talk about today is kind of the content is key, the content on our website, why that's important. Social media, we're not going to get into how do we get more likes, how do we get more shares and comments and things like that. We're going to talk a little bit, though, about how it's actually directly related to SEO, and actually taking your social media presence seriously can have a positive impact on your SEO presence. We'll get a little bit into why, obviously, having a mobile-friendly site is actually going to matter. We'll go into a couple Google tools, and then we'll just finally kind of wrap it up with some Google advertising. And again, this is kind of talking about AdWords, but really, again, going after, we're not going to tell you how to do ads and kind of all that kind of stuff. We have other presentations for specifically those types of things. Just going to tell you how it's related to SEO. So the first thing I like to start out with is just some kind of cool facts, and I won't spend a lot of time on these. You can see these are from 2016. I'm excited. 2017 stats will be coming out here in June. So it's just kind of crazy to see the, again, kind of the explosion of numbers from 2011 being 80 billion all the way to 222 billion in 2016. And obviously the whole goal of this is to, again, understand the system, understand SEO, understand Google, so that we can kind of get a piece of that number as well. Other thing that I like just to kind of go over a little bit too is kind of the search anatomy. So we're obviously going to use Google, but obviously, actually all of these things apply to other search engines as well. So one thing is whenever you are doing a search, up at the top here, it's called a search query. So no matter what you type in, if it's a sentence, if it's a letter, if it's a word, it's called your search query. When we hit enter, you're usually going to get something that looks similar to this. It may not always look like this. You may not have all of these pieces there, but these are the pieces that you're going to see on a search result. So the top is usually filled with paid advertisements, and that's like your Bing ads, your Google AdWords, those types of things. Next is going to be your local listings. So these are if your, again, your search query has anything to do with a local result that Google believes could be connected, they're going to try and show you another platform that's more built for local users. Then here is really kind of what we're talking about here is the main kind of thing that people focus on is the organic search results. The reason we call them organic is they're not influenced by monetary value. Doesn't mean, again, that you're not going to spend time and energy on it, that you couldn't, again, hire, school marketing to help you with that. You couldn't hire an employee or an intern to do that. What we're talking about, though, is that money's not going towards Google to actually influence it. Unlike, AdWords or Bing ads, where that money is going directly to that search engine to influence that. And then last but not least is the knowledge graph or the ID card. This kind of tries to take a bunch of the information and makes it a little bit more interactive. So you'll see some more pictures. This is where you can see reviews, maps. It's kind of related to local listings and kind of that feature, but it also is technically separate as well. So again, this is another thing you can kind of look at in a little bit more interactive kind of piece. So technically there are 3 different types of SEO. So the 3 types are going to be back-end optimization, front-end optimization, and off-site optimization. Now, all of these are important, and all of these are going to help you increase your presence on Google, but some of them are going to be easier or harder for you to kind of do, and this is where you kind of have to figure out where you may need other resources or help when you're kind of looking at these. So for instance, back-end optimization is going to be, it's going to be dealing with a lot of the HTML, a lot of the coding, a lot of like the settings. So if you're using a CMS platform like a WordPress, a Wix, a Weebly, Joomla, those types of things, there's a lot of settings in the back end that can actually benefit your SEO presence. And unfortunately, again, like I can't necessarily give you examples of every one because every CMS system is going to be different. But the reason I point this out is some of these things you may have to Google or look up to see exactly how you're going to implement them to your specific CMS system. And again, just as a reminder, CMS means content management system. Again, that's going to be your WordPress, your Weebly, your Joomla, et cetera, et cetera. Front-end optimization is usually probably one of the easiest ones to, again, understand, and this is going to be pretty much everything that users that are coming to your site are going to be able to see and interact with. So this is all of the content, meaning all of the words, all of the pictures, all of the videos, even just the layout of your site, making sure that people can access the pages that they can actually, that they want to access. Google, again, analyzes all of these things, and we'll get into this a little bit more on the next slide. But again, this is probably the most important one. Is probably your front-end optimization when looking at what you can handle internally and how you can make it different than other websites. And then last but not least is off-site optimization. So the first 2 are obviously dealing with your website as kind of a whole. The off-site optimization is going to be looking at anything that's connected to your website, but that's obviously not your website. So this is obviously, as you can see here, these are going to be your social media accounts, your local listings, again, on Google Maps, on Bing Maps, on Apple Maps, YouTube, again, Vimeo, different YouTube and video sites. Even things like having profile pages on networking events, like, again, your Metro IBAs, your BNIs, your Better Business Bureau, like all those types of things are kind of what we're talking about with off-site optimization. Next is going to be kind of shifting here a little bit and talking a little bit more specifically about how the content on your website is going to be key and going to be crucial. This is honestly probably going to be the most important slide we've talked about, or that you can kind of apply to actually, again, implementing these things onto your your SEO presence. So the first is using important keywords. Now this is probably pretty, again, kind of like obvious, meaning like, well, Ben, duh, we want to use, important keywords and we want to do those keywords, but there's a couple things with this bullet point that is, again, more than meets the eye. So the first thing is that Google actually uses what we call a spider technique now. What they do is they actually send out these little bots and analyze your entire site and then look and then essentially glean what they feel the content is telling them, and actually then again, tries to understand your website. How this is different than previous is back in the day, you may have heard of things called meta tags. And meta tags were essentially, and you actually sometimes can see this in some CMS systems, where there's a little box that says keywords or meta tags, meta keywords. It means the same thing, but they just sometimes label it differently. What used to happen, essentially, is you would go into the back end of your website and you would tell Google that, hey, I want to be found for when someone actually searches this keyword or this key phrase, and then comma, next keyword, key phrase, et cetera, et cetera. But what was happening is Google found out that people were kind of abusing the system, that it was putting too much trust into us, so to speak, that people were finding ways to manipulate it, were putting in irrelevant keywords, either knowingly or mistakenly. And so Google actually a few years ago kind of got rid of meta tags. So if you see a box like that, you can fill it in. It's not going to hurt you. Just know that it's not going to help you. Now what Google does is they're essentially gleaning their own meta tags and their own meta keywords from your website content. So we need to essentially have the content on our site that's filled with those keywords, but kind of in a natural way. I tell people is, if you want to write something that if you went to a Metro IVA event, a networking event, and you were going to talk to someone that you had never met before, that you could literally take that off of your website and you could read that to them and they fully understand what you do. Again, it's really at the end of the day, what SEO is a business relationship with Google. Any business relationship doesn't just happen overnight. It needs a really strong introduction, and that's why doing these things are going to give you that strong introduction. But then we're going to talk about how do we build that relationship with Google, and that's really kind of, this is kind of the crux and the start of it, is making sure we have those important keywords. Now, another thing that I like to try to recommend people to do is do a little bit of keyword research, and you can actually do some of this for free. And you can try some of this on your own. Otherwise, obviously, you can use professionals as well for this too. But the reason we want to do some keyword research is because you may be surprised at what people are searching for to actually find you or to find your product or service. SEO is really, at the end of the day, someone searching for your products or services that don't know you exist, but are looking for what you offer. And so sometimes we see those small business owners will a lot of times use keywords or phrases that are very, again, familiar with them, but we actually do some keyword research and we find out that the general public isn't really using that. It may not be 100% correct to your industry, but at the end of the day, you obviously want to be found the way that your potential customers are looking for you. So a couple different platforms that you can utilize for this. The first is actually the Google AdWords keyword planner tool. Now, what's kind of nice is you don't have to put a credit card down. You don't have to actually be running ads. You can actually just run some, keyword research, again, with the Google AdWords keyword planner tool. And you can kind of see what's kind of happening in your local area, your local state, your local region, and kind of see what's going on there. Otherwise, the two other products that they have premium versions, but that also have some free versions you can kind of play around with, is going to be Moz, M-O-Z, and then also SEMrush are two other ones that I like to try to recommend to people. And again, you're going to see some limitations on these because they are paid platforms, but they can at least give you a head start. I can guarantee you a lot of probably your competition is not even taking this step, so it can be beneficial to you. So kind of moving along here is doing our next bullet point is our URL and web pages. And what we're talking about here is you want to make sure, if there's one thing you can take away from this bullet point, is to make sure that every specific service that you offer has its own web page or own landing page, if you will. The reason for that is sometimes we see people that build websites that say services, and they list all of their services and all of the information on one page. Well, if you think about it, yes, your services are related, but the way that Google looks at this, I always like to use a landscaper as an example. A landscaper may offer landscaping in the summer and then do snow removal in the winter. Those are obviously related. They're dealing with, again, obviously your yard or your lawn or your roads. But what happens, though, is if we put them all on one page, if somebody's looking for snow removal in the winter, Google looks at your page and goes, hey, well, there's content here, but it's only 50% of the content is related to what this person is searching for. Whereas if we were to take that content and put it on one page, now 100% of that content on that page is now related to that keyword that someone's searching for, that search query that someone's looking for on Google. So you want to make sure that every service page, or every service has its own page, and you can effectively, kind of explain that and help Google understand why someone should choose you, what you do to offer them, and how that's kind of related. So that's really kind of what we're talking about there. When we talk about that URL and kind of that web page's bullet point is that.
So can I ask a question, Ben?
Yep.
So when you're talking about AdWords and stuff, where Metro IBA uses WordPress, do I still just keep those in there, or do I just really not need to spend my time if I'm focusing?
You honestly don't need to spend your time.
Okay.
It's more of kind of just a box that's kind of been there.
So it's a holdover.
Yep. And some people that use like WordPress, again, even like your Weebly, your Wix, and some of the lower level ones, like WordPress, you can download, plugins like Yoast SEO that will help you kind of assist that. Your other platforms, like your GoDaddy, your Weebly, your Wix, actually have kind of the SEO builders kind of built into them, and they should walk you through it. Again, I highly recommend looking up your CMS system and seeing what SEO like plugins or software that they have to allow you to help, again, with that kind of process.
Okay, so for a busy small business person who doesn't have a whole lot of time, it's okay to let that go and focus on their content. Again,
really, if you can take one thing away from this entire presentation, is to focus on your content.
Okay.
It's the hardest thing to do, I will admit. Like, I'm not a copywriter. Like, we have copywriters on our staff, and when I started the business, it was trying to formulate all these ideas into actually words that are not only going to communicate to people effectively, but also communicate to Google. So, sometimes that you may want to get some help with that when it comes to your content, copywriters, freelancers, different companies out there. But yes, definitely make sure you focus on your content. And that kind of actually is a good segue into the next two, again, bullet points here. The first is just keeping your website up to date. Believe it or not, Google can actually see when changes are being done on your website. One of the factors, or one of the check boxes, if you will, that Google is looking for is to make sure that you're just not, again, putting stuff out there and just kind of abandoning it. And this is where things like even just, updating photo galleries, adding things to blogs, again, obviously changing as, your team grows or shrinks and stuff like that. It's just making sure that you're keeping your website up to date, and if you can, trying to find a way to make it more interactive or to make it more non-static, to make it more active. That, again, we're not just letting it sit here and then, 20 years down the road, we haven't done anything with it. And again, this kind of is a good segue, and with your question, Jill, is the next bullet point is these are three really big buzzwords and why they're related to blogs, but they're actually related to all of the content on your site. And the three big buzzwords are going to be unique, natural, and relevant. And so we kind of dissect those a little bit. The unique one, this is a big one, especially, again, as small business owners try to create their own content, or even working with a copywriter or a company to kind of do it. You want to make sure that your content is unique and kind of different. And so we just don't want to start copying and pasting. The two biggest examples of where I see this a lot of time is, one is if you're a franchisee, a lot of times just kind of copying and pasting the franchise kind of information. Now again, obviously franchises are going to have their own regulations, and there's some other things you need to go with. But there's one area that you can kind of explore to see if we can make our stuff look different. The other big way too is when we see small business owners selling products that are also found on other websites, predominantly Amazon. What happens too is if you just copy either a competitor's content and just change out to your words or do a little bit there, if you just copy and paste Amazon's description, not only are you obviously kind of, again, you could be on copyright on a legal standpoint, but the other part from an SEO standpoint is essentially what you're telling Google right now is that content over there is so good that you don't need to bother actually creating your own. So what Google actually ends up doing now is you end up reinforcing that content or that website and diminishing yours. Because again, you're essentially telling Google that it's so good that I don't even need to worry about creating my own. So this is why it's super important to sit down and create your unique content and make sure that it's different than out there. And that's where, again, sometimes working with a professional can kind of help that. Out there. Otherwise, if you have those skills, you can just write, making sure we kind of, do that. The other way is natural, and this is kind of to combat what used to happen a few years ago, which is kind of keyword stuffing. Really, at the end of the day, again, if you couldn't print off your content and read it to somebody and feel confident that you sound educated while doing it, then, again, you probably shouldn't have that, again, content on your website. So again, it's more or less kind of talking about that, again, for it.
There's a question from Catherine then. How does Google know who originated the content?
Yeah, it comes down to indexing. So when you write a piece of content and put it online, Google, when they index that, they associate that to your website and essentially almost, again, associate you as the author. So Google knows and kind of has a timestamp on it, so to speak, to be able to. Now, technically, obviously, you could get into a situation if it was posted at 9 a.m. and you posted it, you copy and paste it the next day. Obviously, you could probably trick the system, but again, Google gets pretty fast and knows this pretty well, and most likely it's not going to be that close of a time period where that's ever going to really be an issue. And then last but not least is relevant. Obviously, everything in people's industries change, meaning that, new things come up, things fade. Like, it's amazing. This presentation, I tell you, looked, again, night and day different from 6 years ago when I was talking about SEO to now. There's a lot of things that have changed. So it's just making sure that you're kind of the relevant and new, not only from a date standpoint, meaning that if you're writing blogs or writing useful articles, but, again, they're coming out and to the user, they're showing up as 2015, it's probably not going to be looked at as highly as the person that's, that comes up and it's 2018. So again, it's just making sure you're kind of being relevant and kind of, look at those topics. And the relevancy really kind of applies to blogs. This is a great way to kind of talk about new topics, talk about changing topics, and things like that that are going on in your industry. The other thing to kind of look at it is that SEO is also done in 2 phases. And this kind of goes back to the analogy I gave with the business relationship. That phase 1 is that introduction phase. So this is making sure that, again, we do a lot of the stuff that needs to be done once. And what I mean by that is like your initial content, making sure that your website's mobile friendly, which we'll get into here, making sure that all of your social media and your local listings and your maps accounts are set up. Because it's like one of those things, like once those are set up and they're set, we've introduced ourselves to Google, now we can move on to phase 2, which is kind of the growing phase, which is now how do we build our relationship with Google? Now, we'll kind of see some of these things, again, on here, but honestly, it's not super hard to kind of build your relationship with Google. It's doing things consistently, meaning that on a consistent basis, we're creating activity or creating content online, essentially trying to make us look like the industry expert. At the end of the day, we're trying to, again, the reason how search engines really work is that we want to make Google look good, because then Google rewards us. Because at the end of the day, people are searching for a solution to something. It could be an answer, could be a product, could be a service. And if Google gives that person the perfect result, and that ends up being you, obviously you benefit from it, but Google's really looking out for themselves. And so what we need to think about is, how do we make Google better? Well, one of the ways that we can do it is keep throwing, again, content out there that could potentially answer somebody's question or help them direct them to us, which then would fulfill what their search query was. So really that's what phase 2 is kind of building off of that. So consistently doing blogs maybe once a month, consistently having a social media presence, getting reviews on your local listings or your map listings, having, again, those profiles filled out on your different networking events, and as you, again, go into new ones, that you fill those out. Again, what you're doing is you're making yourself look bigger and better. Just like if you were to take this offline with a relationship, with a business relationship, you would go out to coffee, you would have lunch, you would meet each other at networking events. It's the same type of concept. So we need to make sure that we have those touch points with Google. Next thing to look at is the Hummingbird update. This happened a few years ago, and what essentially this does now is, believe it or not, every time that you do a search on Google, Google's actually doing a mini search within milliseconds to understand what that person is searching for. What I mean by this is, back in the day, it was very keyword-centric. Obviously, keywords are still important because they're a part of our language, but it's not as rudimentary as, like, the example I would give is, if I typed in crazy Vikings mug, again, Google will be looking for those 3 words. They try to match crazy, Vikings, and mug on somebody's page and kind of be able to kind of do that. Well, now what they do, and it's a little bit more sophisticated, is they're trying to understand what I mean by that and then doing the search. So again, I may get unique Vikings glass even while searching for crazy Vikings mug, because they know some of the synonyms and they're trying to understand, how, again, me as Ben Tice am searching. Now, they do this in a variety of different ways. They have partnerships with social media sites. They have some relationships there. They have their own social media site with Google+. They, again, this is where cookies and kind of your browsing history, your Google accounts and stuff like that. Google does that, but the reason for it is they're trying to figure out how you search for things that could be different to others. Again, the other example I like to give to people is, for instance, if you haven't been able to tell with the name of my company and the colors, I'm a diehard Vikings fan. But so like if I were to type in Moss, M-O-S-S, Google, knowing me as a person, as a searcher and as an account, will probably recommend Randy Moss over probably Kate Moss or the green stuff that grows on trees. Again, as they get to know me more, they kind of do that. So how this affects you as a business owner, obviously that's more as a personal kind of level. This helps you, again, going back to kind of that natural content where we don't have to do a lot of those techniques way back in the day where we're so focused on keywords and, again, every single, we need a page for every type of variation of a keyword. So like, for instance, a lot of people, again, like S's. Instead of website development could be, again, website design. Again, they're very similar, and Google kind of understands that. So what we're talking about is kind of like the S's, the synonyms, is this actually helps the business owner because we don't need to spend all the time on being so keyword specific. It's more of your presence as a whole. And then last but not least is the longer but stronger. Again, a couple years ago, Google has actually kind of made it harder and longer to kind of get up towards the top, but it's not as volatile as it used to be. We all obviously want to be number one, again, for every keyword that we can think of or every search phrase or whatever. But when you really kind of look at it, Google's point is that, again, as a business owner, as a website, we should have the wherewithal that we're going to be in business, that we're going to have a website for more than 6 months, for, again, 12 months, 36 months, 62 months, et cetera, as time goes on. And just, again, like a business relationship, it doesn't happen overnight, and we need to kind of build that, and it takes time to kind of put effort into that. But it's sometimes a good point to know that this isn't going to, again, if you want to get instant ratings and kind of be right at the top, that's where something like Google AdWords is going to come into play because now you're paying to be at that spot. So social media, again, we're not going to necessarily talk about how do we get more likes and shares and whatever. We do that in a different workshop. But what I just want to make sure that you guys realize here is social media definitely has an impact on SEO because, especially these main 4 platforms that you can kind of see right here, is that Google either owns, obviously, Google+, or they have relationships with Facebook, Twitter, and Pinterest where they can actually analyze and actually index the content that's on there. Now, I should clarify, with Facebook, it's going to be your business account, so they're not indexing your personal account, but they do have these partnerships with these social media platforms, and it helps, again, Google understand or get a better sense of your presence as your footprint in the marketplace and has more information to see if you may be a possible solution to somebody's search query. So a couple things like that. So again, doesn't mean that if you don't see your social media platform on here that you shouldn't be on it. The big one that usually a lot of people ask me about is going to be, like, for instance, Instagram. It just doesn't really have an impact on SEO, again, per se, when it, again, kind of comes out. But doesn't mean you shouldn't be on it. If you want to look up Swole Marketing on Instagram. So there's different values with the different ones. But if you're looking at it from a purely SEO standpoint or trying to get a better feel for how do I, again, get an ROI out of social media, this could be another, kind of thing that you can kind of look at, an indicator on which way you want to go because of the impact that it may have not only on your social presence and, again, the benefits there, but also as your website and overall presence. But I will say there is kind of a caveat with that if we have these platforms and we don't regularly use them, it's just like having a website that we don't regularly update. It can have a negative impact, or Google, again, can start to question why we're doing those sorts of things because, again, the idea is we're going on these platforms and we're trying to be a resource for people on those different platforms. So just an important kind of thing to realize that we really want to, again, if you're going to be on social media, take it seriously and be able to do that. But these are going to give you the best ROI for it when it comes to SEO. Another thing that we kind of want to look at is kind of the transformation of kind of from desktop to kind of mobile responsive sites that we've kind of seen over the past, I'd probably say about 5 or 6 years here. So, everything, used to pretty much just be on a desktop. Then what we kind of had was just mobile-specific sites, which were just kind of cookie cutters you kind of put in there. And now what we kind of see is mobile responsive sites. So if you see these 3 buzzwords up here, I just like to throw these up there because they are very similar, but they actually have different meanings. And I just like to try and make sure people understand what those meanings are. So the first one is mobile capable. Essentially, every website out there is mobile capable, meaning that I can access your website on my phone. Now, a lot of times, again, you're going to see these mobile-capable sites where you're going to have to zoom in, you're going to have to move left to right. Again, you click the services page, but you accidentally click the about page because the links are so close together because it's really not thumb-friendly. But at the end of the day, I can access your site. That's mobile-capable. Now, mobile-optimized or mobile-friendly is just making sure that if you either have one of these last two, you either have a mobile-specific site, which is a little old school but still works, and some people still have those, or you have a mobile responsive site. And essentially it's meaning that you've taken the time to either build it, rebuild it, or build off of it to make sure that people that are accessing your website on a mobile device can actually access it, again, effectively, and it's very, again, thumb-friendly, mobile-friendly. Really what happens on a responsive or mobile site is it's almost essentially, how you can kind of look at this is anything towards the top and towards the left is given priority. And it essentially, breaks your website into columns and then kind of puts it onto there. Really what we're talking about, which you've all probably experienced here, is you jump on a phone and you kind of scroll. Again, with all of the scrolling that is involved is really kind of what we're talking about when we stack all that on top of each other. And so, and then finally, mobile responsive is just a type of mobile optimized or mobile friendly type of, again, kind of site. Mobile optimized and mobile friendly is more kind of a category, or just making sure it kind of, checks the box there. Mobile responsive is a specific kind of website, or we kind of call it a liquid template. Mobile responsive site is going to, quote unquote, respond to any device you pull it up on, and is going to try to match it pixel for pixel. So, just you can kind of see the transformation here, very important, kind of important to realize some of those terminologies because they can sometimes either get confused or get interchanged. But how this now, obviously there's a user experience involved, but how this affects SEO is that it has a profound impact on the way that your website ranks. So now we're approaching almost 3 years ago that Google launched an update essentially dubbed Mobilegeddon. That what they did is prior to this, if you had a mobile site, you essentially got a boost from Google. Now it's kind of the reverse, that if our website is not mobile optimized or mobile friendly in one way or another, that we can actually see kind of a harm being done here. You can see a couple things. One is you can actually see it impact your overall ranking even on a desktop because your overall health of your website or optimization isn't where Google wants to see it. And you will actually see a much more profound impact on a mobile device, meaning that your desktop may just suffer a little bit, whereas if someone were to search for your website or your website could potentially pop up with a search query involved, again, you could be a lot lower or disappear essentially from the first page or second page on a mobile device if Google sees that your website's not mobile friendly. The reason this came up is because people don't realize that Google does a ton of market research. And they a lot of times like to take that market research that they find to figure out what people like on websites, what people don't like, and they like to put that into their algorithm. This is where, again, things like, adding pictures to your website or making sure, even the service pages, having those separate service pages kind of out, having it mobile friendly. A lot of these things kind of came, at least initially, from market research. It doesn't take a brain surgeon to see why or to see that would happen, but it's important to realize that why Google keeps changing with a lot of these things is because they are, they're looking at, they're looking at trying to appease their users. Again, we're trying to make Google look good, and their main interest isn't us, it's using us to benefit the user that's searching. So a couple things you just want to make sure, again, a lot of these things aren't such a big deal as they used to be, but you want to make sure that if you're using a WordPress or anything that has plugins, that plugin is also mobile friendly. You'll see sometimes where your website will actually change, but that plugin doesn't, and it kind of ruins the experience on a mobile device. So you want to make sure you do some mobile testing when you have these types of things, either being built, rebuilt, or you're transferring yourself. And you just want to make sure if there's, again, one biggest way that you can really impact your, again, SEO kind of presence in a pretty dramatic way, it's making sure that you either build your website in mobile or to get it kind of fixed in that regard. Now, one thing I will recommend to everybody is Google actually has its own kind of mobile checker or mobile test to make sure that your website not only, again, you may pull it up on your phone and see that it's actually, that it's, hey, it's mobile friendly, it's, it's responsive, great. But there actually have been cases where, for whatever reason, with some of the coding, it's not read like that by Google, which obviously is a concern. It's the way that Google reads it, unfortunately not the way that your eyes are seeing it. So unfortunately, there's not the best URL I can give you, but if you just go to Google and you type in or you search for Google mobile-friendly test, again, if you just Google mobile-friendly test, it'll pop up right away. All you do, and you can do this right now if you want, you can do this on your phone, you can literally just type in your web address, click enter, it'll analyze it, and it'll tell you if it's mobile-friendly or not, and even give you some recommendations and some suggestions. Really easy way, you're done in 30 seconds. If you're good to go, green check mark, great. If you have a red, begin kind of X and some warnings there, obviously you want to take notice of that and get some help from there too. So just make sure you kind of Google that, and I see that Jill put that in the search bar, which is very helpful. Because again, it's not a very friendly URL. So, okay, looking at moving on to another kind of platform. This is kind of a Google Tools kind of aspect of this. So the first is going to be. Do you want to answer that question?
Right. Do you want to take a look at?
Sorry, I just saw the question come in, Kathy. So yes, most of those platforms, your question is can one assume that a platform like Shopify is taking care of being mobile responsive? So you should be able to assume that, but honestly, again, all of these newer platforms like your Shopify, your Weebly, your Wix, all of those ones that are kind of built-in templates should have that built in there. But it kind of depends on when your website was built. Sorry, I'm kind of starting here just because trying to figure out how to answer your question, because we've seen Shopify websites. So if you just built it last year, then you should be fine. I would still probably just make sure that Google's reading it that way. But if you've probably had your website built in the past couple, 2, 3, even probably 4 years, depending, you're probably at a 90+% that your website's mobile responsive or mobile friendly off of it. Well, if you've had it for a while here, that's when sometimes, again, we usually kind of see things that weren't mobile friendly. But yes, your Shopify's, your Weebly, your Wix's, and all those types of things. Almost virtually every new WordPress theme is going to be mobile responsive, and so you're definitely going to want to look at that. But highly recommend you do the test just to make sure. So next is kind of looking at local listings. So local listings are essentially kind of the little red pins on the map that you kind of see. The most famous one is obviously going to be Google, but there's some other big ones out there. You've got your Bing, your Yahoo, your Yelp, your again, Apple Maps, which actually, believe it or not, actually connects with Yelp if you're wondering how Apple actually pulls in all of their map data. Yellow Pages is another big one kind of too, but essentially, what these are is these are online Yellow Pages, kind of directories, really kind of snapshots for people that are looking for your potential products or services or your type of business in their local area. Very powerful, and again, from the standpoint of that, you can really look, if you remember back when we started the presentation, actually I'm just going to quickly go right back just to show you what I'm talking about is, there's this little section a lot of times always designated to just local results. Why that's, again, super powerful for you is while you're trying to build up your organic kind of, again, search results with Google, you can also, again, be building up your local ones and have a better chance of sometimes getting those faster than some of your organic ones. And if they're at the same time, that's great too, because think about it, if we can be listed on the Google Maps, on the local listing, plus we're in the organic search results, now we're listed twice on a page. Obviously, any more times over one that you can be listed on the same page, especially like when it's Google results there, it's only going to exponentially increase your chances that you're going to be the link that somebody clicks. Now, what's also kind of nice is these can be found essentially on 4 different types of platforms. So search is obviously like your Google search is going to show up Google one, Bing search is going to show up, again, Bing Maps, et cetera, et cetera. On the mobile app, so if you have an Android device, all of your maps are pre-installed with Google. If you have an iPhone, they're pre-installed with Apple Maps, but you can also download Google Maps if you'd like. Again, Apple Maps is pulling from Yelp, so just kind of keep that in mind. You can go directly to one of these map, again, kind of pages or these local listing kind of pages. And then also social media, and this is more for like kind of Google Plus is kind of connected to Google Maps there. Sometimes some of the information like with Bing is pulled into kind of Facebook because Facebook uses Google Maps, or Bing Maps. And so just kind of looking at those integrations can definitely be useful. So the thing that a lot of times I'll get questions on with local listings is that people will see that there are a ton of other local listings out there across, again, the internet. And it's true. Again, these are the top 5 or 6 that we're kind of talking about here. But there are, again, dozens upon dozens upon dozens of other ones out there that people actually utilize, or they have partnerships with other ones. Now, you can try and go to all of these ones separately and start actually, again, signing up for them and kind of doing it, but that can actually take a lot of time. And, when we have like these 5 or 6 that we're talking about, make up over 85 to 90% of the market share, again, depending on which ones we're looking at here, but they make up the majority of them. So what I usually highly recommend is using a product that we've found that we really like, that we recommend to clients, called Moz Local. M-O-Z Local. You'll recognize this, I actually recommended for the keyword research, I said a product called Moz. This is kind of one of their sub-products. What essentially this does is you go and again, I would highly recommend still creating your local listing like on Google to begin with, or Facebook, or both, some of these, bigger ones, but then going to Moz Local. And what you do is you type in your, again, your information. It pulls up your listing, and then it goes out online and actually blasts to all these other databases and actually updates those there. Why this is important is obvious for one reason, is to make sure all of your information is correct. And even if people aren't utilizing some of those other platforms as often as you, or even as often as, again, very often in general, it's obviously good to be on those. The other benefit to this, though, is what we call in the industry NAP, N-A-P. And what that means is name, address, phone. The more consistent we can make the name of our business, the address of our business, and the phone of our business more consistent and more the same and more prevalent across the again, internet, the better it's going to look to Google and actually increase your SEO presence. So not only is it a better user experience, making sure all your information is consistent, this is also super helpful if you've moved in the past. Because you probably have different conflicting, again, kind of stuff out there. So again, highly recommend Moz Local. I will say that there is a cost for it. It does cost $99 per year to kind of have that initial kind of setup and then that connection, again, going forward. But I will say, though, that the cost is way less than a lot of other companies that are out there that will charge sometimes anywhere from a few hundred up to $1,000 or $2,000 to do very similar types of services. So again, highly recommend this Moz Local and being able to kind of have that for it.
So Kathy has a question. Is there advice for businesses that don't have a physical retail location? Perfect.
Great question, Kathy. So a lot of these different types of local listings actually have an option where you can actually hide your specific your specific address and just show up in the city and kind of have a service area. Like, I'll be honest, when I first started Skull Marketing, I ran it out of my house. I didn't necessarily want people knocking at the door, didn't want, again, anything to go up there. So it just showed that I was in Golden Valley. And then as we obviously moved, we were able to kind of update that. So if you do run your business out of your house, know that you can kind of modify that and essentially hide just your street address and show up in the city. Now, another thing, Kathy, that you kind of, again, bring up, though, with that question, though, is that please remember that, again, Google Local, Bing Local, Yahoo Local is going to be for your local customers, while your website is for your global customers. So if you are a completely e-commerce type-based business, these local listings really aren't meant for you and are not, again, you're not going to see necessarily the benefit, again, kind of that. So just kind of keep that in mind, again, with that again. Google, local is going to be for your local customers, your website's for your global customers.
There's another question. What percentage is considered good on Moz Local?
I know what you're talking about because, when you put in your information, it kind of gives you a percentage. Honestly, you want to be as high to 100% as possible. And the longer you're on kind of Moz Local and the longer you even do some of these other SEO things, the higher your percentage is going to be. I would say you definitely want to be at least in the mid to high 80s to really, and that's a really good score. Anything less than that, I'll say honestly, it should be really worth the $99 to really kind of get you up to that level. So it's going to be kind of a little bit different for everybody, but highly recommend that. Most likely, I can almost guarantee that $99 is most likely going to be worth that bump that you'll get in that score. Now again, that score is an arbitrary number, that's just theirs, but it's a good indicator of where you're sitting right now. Any other questions on that?
I think that's what we've got for right now.
Okay, perfect.
Just to let you know, we've got about 16 minutes, so keep your questions coming.
Good. The next one is going to be Google Analytics. I like to point this one out. This is one of the rare tools, though, that just being on Google Analytics or installing and getting analytics kind of connected doesn't necessarily help SEO. Whereas obviously like your local listings, we're going to talk about another product after this, or a couple of them, those ones are going to be if you're just on those platforms. This one, though, essentially gives us data that then we can apply to our SEO strategies and figure out what's kind of going on. Now, I actually have two completely other separate workshops just for Google Analytics because it's such a large topic and you can dive so much into this. But just as kind of the 100-foot overview kind of Google Analytics is that it pretty much is going to, for free, analyze your entire website and give you every stat, metric, and analytic that you can probably think of with your site. Things that you can kind of see is, where are people visiting your site from? Not only states or countries, but all the way down to cities. It's really kind of cool because all of the stuff you can also compare. So you can compare not only the, again, the quantity, but the quality of traffic that's coming in from Golden Valley compared to St. Paul. So we can kind of actually start to compare those types of things. The demographics, actually Google Analytics allows you now to get some demographic data, meaning when it comes to age and gender, it's very similar if you've ever used YouTube Analytics. It's very similar to those types of analytics that you can actually get demographics. Another big one that I love to see is platforms used to access your site. Not only does this mean mobile devices, so you can actually see the breakup between your desktop to mobile usage, just to kind of know what that's like for your users, but also more specifically, you can see, okay, when people came to our site, did they find me because of a search result on Google? Did they come to my website because of my Facebook page? Did they actually just type in skullmarketing.com because they're already actually a client of ours and they're just going back to our website? So you can actually start to, again, put, more quality to the traffic that you're kind of doing. We can also look at deep analytics. So keywords, actually, the reason I put this on here right now is there used to be a feature on analytics that used to give you every keyword that someone typed in on search results to then find you. Unfortunately, it's not that specific anymore. Now they're more generalizations of it, and you have to use a product called Search Console, which I'll talk about here in just a minute, to kind of be able to do it. But that's why I put that on there, because it used to be that way, but because of Google's privacy policies and all of these search engine privacy policies, they kind of took that away. But you can also set up conversions. So for instance, Kathy, when you're talking about having a Shopify site, you could actually set up a conversion where someone actually has to purchase something, and that's considered a quote-unquote conversion. Well, then you could start to track how much money you're making off of people that are finding you from Google, maybe potentially Google Ads or social media. You can actually start to put a better ROI to those things. That's why I included into this, is because it can have profound impact on SEO. So the other one I've kind of alluded to is Search Console. Search Console is a very basic and very kind of clean platform. Really what it is it's kind of a connection on the back end of your website to Google to kind of, gauge the health of your overall website. If you have issues, you can actually communicate with Google on there. The biggest one that you can kind of do is, or the two biggest ones, is going to be, one is a sitemap. You can actually update a sitemap, which is an XML file. What this is essentially it's a bare bones like skeleton of your website, and it kind of submits it to Google, and it's a live kind of file sitting on your website, so that every time that you add a new service page, that you add a new blog, that you make those changes, it actually just pings Google and has them re-index it. So a very important kind of thing. The other thing too is you can actually connect your Search Console and your Google Analytics to get more keyword data on that as well. So the next platform, so we've only got two more, slides to go through here with two different platforms. The next one is going to be YouTube. Again, another one that we have a complete other workshop on. But the reason I like to put this in here is to really show you that YouTube is actually the second largest search engine in the world. And number one is Google. So Google owns 1 and 2, which is obviously a pretty big deal when people tell me, again, when we start talking about why do we focus on Google and stuff like this, it's because they have the two largest search engines in the world. Video is another great way that you can really kind of circumvent or kind of jump over a lot of your competition. Now, I know video can be scary. I know video can be, it's much different than, again, writing a blog, because you kind of have to, again, it takes sometimes more creative juices, or it's just a different type of media that you have to kind of create. But I implore you to start to look at being creative. I'm not talking about that you need to get on camera and pay $3,000 to $5,000 to have a commercial style video there. There are other different ways that we can actually create videos that are going to help us. And the reason we want to do this, and I'll get into how we can do that, but the reason we want to create these videos is because, A, it not only has a profound impact on being found potentially on YouTube, because people actually search for problems or issues, even if it's a product or even a service, believe it or not, on YouTube, but these videos actually can show up on an organic, again, search results on Google, which is really kind of cool. It actually shows your thumbnail of your video, so it's very eye appealing, meaning that your eye can almost go straight to it if it's, no matter if it's ranked number 1 or number 5. But some ideas on what you can kind of do with this kind of stuff is you can do, obviously you can do webinars like this, either, again, with slides, or with just talking, there. You can do Google Hangouts, which are essentially like your Skypes or your GoToMeetings, where they're, again, you can kind of record them and you can almost have like a mock interview, talk to different people, on different topics, and kind of videos like that. You can also do even something as simple as a slideshow video, set to music that has, again, some stuff that has some words going across, again, the screen, showing people what you do. I almost kind of compare it to almost like a movie theater commercial. Again, a lot of times your movie theater commercials are very basic, kind of just some slideshows and stuff like that, but that stuff can really kind of help you. We're not looking to win, again, an award here for our videos. We're looking to make sure that it obviously doesn't detract from our brand, but also, again, can really help us with SEO. And there's a couple other programs out there that I recommend you guys kind of looking at too. One is Promo Video, and the other one is Powtoons. These ones you can kind of create graphic kind of videos, and something maybe to experiment with. Again, you don't have to be on camera. You can kind of, create these graphic videos. And again, those are Powtoons and Promo Video. So,
can you tell me a little bit about Powtoons?
Yep, Powtoons. Yep.
Okay.
So again, yeah, Powtoons and Promo Video, they're a little bit different in regards, but so yeah, here, I'll just take it.
Toon, T-O-O-N? I mean, I'm sorry, Kathy.
So
Thank you, Ben.
Yep. So you can kind of go through it. You get some subscriptions. Honestly, it's pretty cost effective. And really, what it's doing though is it allows you to kind of create some just different types of videos that are graphics. And they have a lot of like stock ones, so it's not like you're drawing a person. They have different people, and you can kind of customize them and kind of make it through it. It's a little hard to explain, but if you kind of go through it, I'm just saying, like, just be a little creative and try and think of some different ways with video, other than a lot of times people think that they need to be on camera and, we need to spend, thousands of dollars. No, hey, start small. Start, with taking one of your blog post videos and making a webinar of it, or a slideshow video of it, and start discussing it more openly. Obviously, you don't necessarily have to just read your blog post, again, every word, but have a discussion about your blog post. That's something easy to kind of look at. So just looking at trying to utilize YouTube a little bit more, this is something that can really catapult you, really help your SEO. Oh, okay, there we go. Last but not least is going to be Google AdWords. Again, another topic that we do a whole complete other thing, and something that we try to. I'm not going to be able to tell you how to create your account, how to again get better CPC and CTR rates and stuff like that. But what I'm talking about here is these are the ads that if you want to rank right away, you essentially can pay Google to have a spot right up at the top. Now, kind of the caveat with this though is that if you ever stop doing Google AdWords, you haven't built up any equity with Google, so it's done. So again, it doesn't mean that that's not powerful. We have a lot of clients that utilize this with SEO because SEO takes some time to build. This is something that we can pay for right away. Also, if you have very seasonal businesses or things that kind of come and go or that you're testing, this is another thing to kind of look at. And the last point that I want to make about Google AdWords is that having better SEO on your website or your web presence actually helps your ads perform better, because again, we have that relationship with Google. But having AdWords does not benefit your SEO. So just making sure it's another platform that is affected kind of similarly to social media in a sense, but in a different way, that it's more of a one-way street. when it comes to kind of, again, Google AdWords and SEO. But they are related, and it is something important to kind of look at and analyze. So really kind of, wrapping it up here, if you guys have any, again, questions, we've got about 5 minutes here, so please get them in there. But just kind of, I'll talk here a little bit with a recap. Again, talking about the economic impact, $222 billion in 2016. That number is obviously going to increase for 2017 when we get those, again, get those stats back. But really looking at some of the things that we talked about today. Content is key. Really, really, really focusing on the content on your website. Making sure that it's unique, that it's natural. Doing some of that keyword research to figure out kind of what people are searching for within there. Knowing that you kind of have somewhat of a safety net, though, with the Hummingbird update, but really we want to take as much effort into our hands as possible and help Google, which then in lieu helps us. Being on those social media platforms has an impact on SEO when it comes to Google+, Facebook, Twitter, and Pinterest. And obviously the other ones have an impact, but those are really going to have our best impact on SEO, making sure 100% that we go search for that and we find that link and we do that mobile test. And then also looking at some of the Google tools, our local listings, our analytics, our search console, our YouTube, and then even like our AdWords down here, understanding how those are impacted, again, with SEO.
Ben, we've got a question from Kathy. How do photos impact your SEO?
Yeah, great question, Kathy. So, way back at the beginning, when I talked about the 3 different types of SEO, I talked about front-end optimization, and I talked about media. So, photos actually play a part in that on 2 respects. One is just having photos on your website is going to help because it's going to give you more of a ratio. Nobody likes going to a website that's white background, black text, and paragraphs upon paragraphs. And again, this is what market research has shown Google. So they actually like to see when people put in pictures there because Google can actually analyze a website and see it broken up with pictures. So pictures are great from that standpoint. Also, you also want to add things called alt tags to those images, which are a brief description of what that image is. I don't necessarily have time to go into it too much because I know we have some other questions, but you might just want to Google alt tags, or you can obviously even just email me or ask me after this as well, and I can explain a little bit more, but alt tags are going to be more important with images as well.
Melissa wants to know, how do reviews impact your SEO?
Yeah. Great question, Melissa. Reviews greatly impact your local listing SEO kind of presence, which obviously has then a relation to your overall SEO. So again, sometimes reviews are easier said than done, and obviously different industries are going to either struggle or succeed more than others on those and getting those reviews. But absolutely, reviews are really critical to your local presence and have a direct impact to your SEO. Now, obviously, Google's going to be the #1 because Google has its own review platform, but obviously some of your other ones when it comes to Yelp, when it comes to Houzz, when it comes to Angie's List or Facebook, all of those, again, anything that is a reputable source and has its own review system can still impact you. Even, again, the Better Business Bureau just came out with one last year. So, like, those different types of organizations are, again, can impact your reviews, but absolutely, yes, they're going to be critical.
Okay, we've got about 1 minute left. If you have another question, please send it in. And Ben, do you have contact information?
Yep. Perfect.
Great.
So to kind of wrap this up, if there's no other following questions, again, I want to thank you guys, for joining me today here on this webinar. If you do have further questions, feel free to reach out. A couple things, obviously you can reach out to my email or my phone. You can text or call if you have questions or just have any inquiries at all. Obviously, if you're ever interested in our services, we'd love to kind of talk with you there. But more importantly, looking at our full workshop schedule, again, remember we do these free workshops and webinars kind of around the Twin Cities and for people to kind of tune into. So really encourage you to check out our workshop schedule there at our, again, at our website or follow us on social media. Obviously, we share not only our upcoming schedules, but we also share a lot of useful tips and tricks and trends that are happening. And then last but not least, I do like to also offer that we do actually offer an in-person 30-minute free consultation. This is not a sales pitch. Again, if you want to talk about our services, that's great. We can schedule a different time. I just know that sometimes this information is almost like drinking through a fire hose. And so sometimes we like to give back with an extra 30 minutes that we can kind of sit down with you and kind of talk a little bit more about that. So highly encourage you. Again, there's no strings. It's honestly just our way of kind of giving back. So really encourage you to take advantage of that free 30 minutes if you have more specific questions. Like for instance, if you have a WordPress website and you have some more specific questions on how to utilize some of these, or whatever your situation may be. So again, I want to thank you guys so much for joining me. Hope to see you guys at a workshop or another webinar soon. And again, look forward to reaching out.
Thank you so much. If you have questions, send them in. I can forward those on to Ben, and I appreciate so much your time in coming today. And Ben, it's been wonderful. Your energy is just contagious, and I have so many things I need to go do with my website right now. But one quick thing, I want to invite everybody to our annual meeting, Metro IBA's annual meeting next week, Wednesday at Gandhi Mahal, and you can see more about that and other upcoming webinars that we'll be having at metroiba.org/events. Thanks so much, everybody. Bye.